Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
So hello everyone, welcome to this month's webinar on custom formatting in Excel. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody is doing well in the run up to Christmas. If you are new to our webinars, I'll just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Deborah Ashby. I'm a Microsoft MVP, course instructor and content creator most recently, who's been using, training and supporting Excel for about 20 years now. So I'm going to be your host for today. There's also a file that we're going to be using in the session today. It's not a particularly large file. I'm going to share that with you in a moment. So if you want to follow along with me in the session today, that's absolutely fine. You can use that file. Alternatively, you can just save it off to your PC and then you can wait until you receive the link in the email and then follow along in your own time. It's entirely up to you. Some people like to follow along, other people just like to watch and make notes. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that, in my experience, confuses people a lot, and that is custom formatting. Now, the reason why it confuses people is because people tend to go into or open up custom formatting and immediately they're confronted with this custom formatting dialog box with all of these weird symbols, these hash characters, these zeros, and it all looks a bit intimidating and doesn't really make much sense if you're not sure what you're looking at. However, it's not quite as intimidating as it first looks, and if you understand just a few basic principles, custom formatting becomes a really useful way of formatting numbers in a spreadsheet in a very specific way. So in the session today, we're going to look at a few different examples, but of course, there are hundreds and hundreds of different custom formats that you could potentially create. So don't think you're just limited to the ones that I'm going to show you today. This is just kind of a jumping off point for you. And then you can do some more reading, do some Googling, watch some YouTube videos. That's always what I recommend. So with all that said, let me just drop into the chat panel the file that we're going to be using today for anybody that wants to follow along. So again, just bear with me. We're going to use this one. Make sure I send you guys the right one. Did that go through? I think so. I've just dropped it in so you can download it. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to download that file. And then we'll get started. So while you're just doing that, I'll run through today's agenda. So these are kind of the things that we're going to be covering. So we're just going to start out talking about what exactly is custom formatting. We're going to explain that so you understand what you're looking at, what you're doing, and why you might need to use it. I'm going to show you a basic formatting example, and then we'll delve just a little bit more into custom formatting so that you really understand what you're looking at. I'm going to show you some things like how you can hide zero values using custom formatting, how you can add text into your custom formats, how you can copy custom formats, and also the difference between those hash symbols and the zeros. I'm going to show you how you can use custom formatting to do things like change the color of values in your spreadsheet, and also how you can do condition-based formatting. I'm then going to show you a little bit of an example of how you can use custom formatting with conditional formatting, and also how you can use emojis and symbols in your custom formats as well. So we've got a few different examples to run through. I've included less content in the session today so that we can run through at a more reasonable pace. Normally I include loads and loads of things, and I tend to have to go a little bit too quick in order to cover everything. So I've tried to keep this down so that we finish within our hour. Alrighty, guys, you should all have that spreadsheet downloaded. So let me open that up as well, and we will get going. That's the one I want. Okie doke. So we're going to start on example number 1. And you can see here, I've just got some small data sets that we're using today. Obviously, the same principles can be applied if you have a much larger data set, but I'm just keeping my data set small so it's super easy for you guys to understand. Now, we're going to start out by just taking a look at some basic formatting. So in this first table, this is just a small table that's showing some sales agents, the sales that they've generated, and then if they've received any commission on those sales. And what I've said over here is that sales agents with less than 100,000 in sales get 0% commission. A little bit harsh, but those are the rules. Sales agents with more than 100,000 in sales get a 20% commission. And we can see those values in the tables just here. In the table, I should say, just here. Now, currently, the numbers that you see in these two columns, there's no formatting applied to these. I haven't gone in and applied any formatting. If you take a look on the home ribbon in this number group just here, you can see I just have the default general formatting applied, which is kind of no formatting really. So what I would probably do here is I would apply some formatting to these two columns in this table. Now I'm going to do this by clicking the little diagonal arrow, which is going to open up the number format or the format cells dialog box and jump me straight to the number tab. Now don't forget that there is a keyboard shortcut to jump directly to here. That keyboard shortcut is Control-1 is going to jump you to the same place. I find myself using that all the time, just as a little quick way of getting to where I need to be. Now in here, this is where I can come to apply my custom formats. Now, looking at this data, I just want to have a comma in here, and I don't want any decimal places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to number, and I'm going to say that I don't want any decimal places, but I do want to use a 1000 separator. So it's going to put a comma, you can see in the sample just above, and it's going to take the decimal places down to 0. So this is a very basic number format. It's not a custom format. This is a number format that I'm applying. You can also see underneath, I can choose how I want any negative numbers in my data to be displayed. Now, I don't have any negative numbers, so I'm not too concerned about this, but maybe one of these does change to a negative. I can choose how I want that to be formatted. So I'm just going to go with the top one for argument's sake. Click on OK, and it's going to apply that formatting. You can see that comma separator. Now, the first thing that's really important to know when you're working with formatting is that formatting is simply a mask. Okay, so it doesn't change the underlying number. It just sits on top of the number to change the way that number looks. How do I know that? Well, if we click on this first cell just here, you can see that it's got the comma in the cell, but if you take a look in the formula bar, we still have that original number. It's not showing the formatting. It doesn't have a comma in there. And you'll find that with any formatting that you apply, it might look different in the cell, but the actual number underneath is exactly the same. So formatting won't affect the number underneath, which means you can still do formulas and things like that. And any formatting you apply isn't going to affect those formulas. Okay, so it's just a mask. Now, if we select these numbers again and press Control-1 to jump into custom formatting, or sorry, format cells, if we go down to the custom option at the bottom, this is where all of our custom formatting lives. And this is generally, people open this up, they take one look at these things listed in here and think, nope, not for me, and then they leave. So this is what we're going to explain, so this area isn't quite as scary the next time you go to it. Now, we applied comma separator formatting in the last example. Now, if I go down to custom, you can see in here what that actually represents in terms of how Excel views that formatting. So this little sort of, I'm going to call it a code. It's not really code, but I'm going to call it code. This little thing here is a representation of the comma separated format. All right, you can see we have a hash symbol, comma, hash, hash, 0. Now, I am going to explain what these hashes and these zeros mean a little bit later on, but just know that when you apply formatting, if you apply it from the home ribbon and come down to custom, you can see how Excel kind of represents that formatting underneath. So this is the first really important thing that you need to know about, and this is positioning when it comes to custom formats. So if we take a look in this list below, where we have all of these different things, I'm going to scroll all the way down. These are all presets that you can use, so you don't have to construct these yourself. But I'm going to go down to something that's super complicated, like this one just here. So this is a pretty complex custom format. And you're probably looking at this thinking, what on earth? To be honest with you, sometimes I look at these and think, what on earth is going on here? But this is really important because it's going to help you understand one of the fundamentals of custom formatting. Now, I don't know if you can see, but this whole string is actually made up of 4 different parts. And each part is separated by that little semicolon in the middle. So can you see a semicolon just there? I've tried to highlight it. There's another one over here. It's really hard to highlight. There we go. Another one just there. And there's another one just there. So effectively, everything before the first semicolon is one part, everything here is another part, everything here is another part, and everything here is another part. Now, what do I mean by parts? What does that mean? Well, let me quickly jump back across to my PowerPoint presentation because it's a little bit easier to see on the slide. So if we go down to here, let's explain. Where are my numbers gone? Oh, there they are. I've got an animation on there. Who knew? Okay, so this is what these different parts mean. So if you're looking at a custom format, there are certain positions that mean different things. So everything before that first semicolon in position 1, that tells us how any positive values in the selected range or column are going to be formatted. So that's our formatting for positive numbers. In position 2, that tells us how any negative values in the range that we've selected are going to be formatted. Position 3, that tells us how 0 values are going to be formatted. So if you have zeros in cells, what are they going to look like? And then in position 4, that's where we specify how we want text in a cell to be formatted. Okay, so don't worry too much about all the hashes and @ signs and things like that. Just get set on these different positions. You have positive, negative, 0 values, and text, and they're all separated with a semicolon. Okay, so a really important point to get your head around. So if we go back to here, for example, and in fact, let's select this column just here where we have some 0 values. If I press Control 1 again and go down to Custom, what do you think would happen if I added in something else into this custom format? So we've just learned that what's in position 1 is how our positive values are going to be formatted. Now, all of the values in the highlighted range are positive values. And this is the formatting that we have applied. This is our comma separated format. So maybe I want to say that if I have any negative values in this column or in this selected range, I want them to be formatted in exactly the same way as the positive values, but I just want a minus symbol on the front. How do you think I might do that? Well, we can simply copy this formatting. I'm going to put in my semicolon, which tells me I'm moving on to my second position, how negative numbers are formatted. I'm going to put a minus in there, and I can just paste in that format. So effectively, I've defined there my positive values and my negative values. And they're both the same format, it's just negative have a dash in front. So pretty simple when you break it down like that. Now, what about if I add a semicolon on the end? That moves us across to the third position, which is how 0 values are going to be formatted. Now, notice that I do have some 0 values in column C. But what if I don't add anything in there? What do you think is going to happen? If I click on OK, it's actually going to hide those 0 values. All right, but because remember, formatting is simply a mask, the value still exists in the cell, it's effectively just hidden from view. And this is kind of something I use quite often. Sometimes you don't want to display zeros or a dash if you have a blank cell. You still want the value to remain, you just want to hide it from view. You could do that. And because the value still exists, it means that we can still perform calculations. So I could go into the next cell and I could do this cell just here, which looks like it's blank, add 20, and the formula is still going to work because effectively there is still a value there. All right. So just start getting your head around the different positions within custom formatting. Now, what about instead of having a blank in here, I want it to say no commission instead. How are we going to add text into here? Well, let's select our cell range again, Control 1. Now, remember, in the last example, we didn't have anything in this third position. So now all I would need to do is simply add a piece of text, what I want it to say. Now, remember, in Excel, every time you want to add text in, it needs to go in quote marks. So I'm just going to say no commission. I think I've spelled that right. So now we have no commission in that third position, and the third position tells us how we're formatting zero values. Okay, click on OK, and it's going to put no commission in those cells. And again, if we widen out this column, you'll notice something very interesting, because the general rule in Excel is that when we have a value in a cell, it's always aligned to the right-hand side of the cell, whereas text is normally aligned to the left. Now, if I just typed no commission into the cell, this would be aligned over to the left, and Excel would recognize this as a text cell. But because we've used custom formatting, and again, the formatting is just a mask on top, really, we still have the value in the cell. It's aligned to the right because it's effectively still a value, and it means that we can still perform calculations on the cell. A lot of the time, you're going to struggle to perform calculations on columns that contain text and values in the same column. All right, so this is one of the biggest advantages of using custom formatting is that you can change the way things look, but you can still use formulas and calculations. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Now, what about if, let's take a look at something else. Let's do Control 1. Now, what about if I was to delete everything out of here and just put in 3 semicolons? What do you think that's going to do? Click on OK. It's going to hide everything in those cells. But again, if we click on the cell, if you look in the formula bar, the values still exist underneath. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why on earth would I want to do that? And I'll tell you, I use this so often. It's really helpful and useful in situations more than you would think, because sometimes there's things that you want to actually hide on your spreadsheet, but you don't want to maybe remove the formula, or you don't want to remove the value from the cell. So just custom format it, add in 3 semicolons, and you're effectively hiding it from view. Okay, so I find this really useful. I'm sure there's many situations you can think of where that would also be useful. All right, let's Control 1 again. So I think we're at a stage now where we should probably start talking through what exactly these pound symbols and these zero symbols are, or zero value, I should say. Now, the thing you have to think of these they are placeholders. Okay, so they're 2 different kinds of placeholders for numbers. So the hash symbol or the pound symbol, whatever you call that, is a variable placeholder, whereas the 0 is a fixed placeholder. So zeros are generally used for decimal places. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm still not sure about that. Let's take a look at an example so you can see the difference between the two. I'm going to cancel out of here, and we're going to move down to our example at the bottom here. Now, I have a little an order number table. We have a list of order numbers in column A. We have a list of products in column B, the customer in column C, and the sales in column D. Now, if you take a look at these order numbers, these look a little bit strange. In general, you wouldn't see order numbers that look like this. Most of the time, order numbers have some type of consistency in the length, how many characters there are. So maybe all of my order numbers need to be 5 characters long. Now, I don't want to go in and start changing these numbers and start trying to add zeros on the front here, because this is order number 100. If I want this to be 5 characters long, I can't add numbers onto the end, because that would make it order 10,000 or 100,000. And if I try and add zeros onto the beginning, we all know that Excel doesn't particularly like numbers with zeros on the beginning. So that's not going to work too well either. So I could use custom formatting to add a level of consistency to these order numbers. So let's do it using the pound symbol first of all, and then we'll do it using the 0 symbol. So I'm going to select these order numbers, Control 1. Let's go to custom. Currently, we just have general formatting applied to these numbers, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in, I want these to be 5 characters, so let's type in 5 pound symbols. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what's going to happen if I do that? Absolutely nothing, because those are variable placeholders. Nothing is fixed about those pound symbols. Okay, so it's just going to keep these the length that they are because it can vary. It doesn't matter. They're not fixed places. Whereas if we press Control 1 and we change these hash symbols to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 zeros and click on OK, because those are fixed, we get the zeros in here, okay? And this is pretty much exactly what I want. It's added in zeros wherever they're needed. So the bottom one here, we didn't need any zeros. It was already 5 characters. But the first one up here, we needed a couple of zeros on the front there to make it consistent, but it's still order number 100. Okay, so those symbols, one is a variable placeholder, the other is a fixed placeholder. And I will say, this is kind of the thing that used to confuse me most about custom formatting, knowing when to use a pound symbol and when to use a zero. I still get it wrong occasionally. A lot of the time it's trial and error. And the good thing with custom formatting is that you do get, as you're doing it, if we go back into Control 1, you do get this little sample at the top here. So as you start adding in zeros, you can sort of see it change above. So if it doesn't look right, you think, oh, okay, I'll use a hash symbol or a pound symbol instead. That's kind of the way I do it. It's always trial and error with Excel. So hopefully that explains it or makes it a little bit clearer for you, though. All right, let's move on to our next example. And I'm going to cancel out of here. And we're going to move on to the sales column just here. Now, currently in here, I have unformatted numbers. And you'll notice that for some of these, we have minus values in here. Now, what I'm going to say is that where we have a minus value, these people have placed their order using a voucher. And I want to kind of represent that fact that they've used a voucher in the cell. So I kind of want it to say voucher next to the number. Now, in general, you shouldn't really combine text and values in one cell. And the reason why we say that is because you then can't perform calculations. So let me show you what I mean. So with this minus 50, maybe I look at this and think, okay, I'm going to go up to the formula bar. I'm going to add in the word voucher like that. Hit enter. It looks a little bit strange. If I widen out this column, you can also see that Excel now thinks that this is a text cell. Because we've got the word voucher in there, it's the first thing in the cell, Excel thinks, okay, this cell contains text. But there is a value in here which we might want to use in a calculation. So maybe I want to add a total. If I do Alt equals, can you see it stops where we have text because it can't find any more numbers? Now I could drag this up to include those cells and hit enter. It's going to give me 632, which is actually the wrong answer because of this cell just here. All right. So just adding text into cells isn't the way to go about this. So let's undo all of this. Let's take it back to how it was. Now, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use custom formatting. So we're going to select our cell range, Control 1. Let's go to custom. Now, this time I'm going to use that formatting that we used at the beginning. So I want to have comma separated value in there. So this is going to be my positive values. Now, what if I want to include a currency symbol? So maybe I want a dollar symbol on the front here. Well, it's as simple as adding that into the custom formatting. So I'm going to go to the start here and I'm just going to add in the dollar symbol. And you can see in the sample above what that's going to look like. So now we have our positive values. That's how they're going to be formatted. I want my negative values to have the word voucher on them, but I also want this same formatting for the number. So I'm going to press semicolon. We're now working with our negative values. And on the front, I want the word voucher. And I'm going to put space dash space like so. And then I can specify the formatting I want for the number, which is going to be the same as what we did previously. So I'm going to type in dollar symbol. We're going to have hash, comma, hash, hash, 0. So let's do that. And now that's exactly how I want it to look. And if I make this column wider, notice that Excel still sees this as a number cell. It doesn't see it as a text cell any longer. So it means that I can safely perform calculations. If I do Alt equals, it's going to select the entire range, hit enter, and now I get the correct answer. Okay, so that is the correct way if you want to combine text with a value in a cell. Use custom formatting to do it. Now, of course, I could take this a stage further. Maybe let's liven this up a little bit and change the color of the minus values as well. So where we have voucher and then the minus value, we want these to show in red so they really stand out in the table. So once again, we can select Control 1, and we're just going to make a quick change to our custom formatting. Now, if you want to use formatting to change the color of different things, this is so simple. You just need to put the color inside square brackets. And obviously, you need to put it in the correct position in custom formatting. So because I only want the negative values to be in red, I need to make sure that I'm working with position number 2, where we have our negative values. So I'm going to move across to, it doesn't allow me to use my mouse in this area, so I have to use the arrow keys to move backwards and forwards. It doesn't normally do that. I don't know why it's doing it today, but it's always the way with webinars. Weird things happen. So I'm moving to the start of what we have in that second position. I'm going to open a square bracket and I'm simply going to type the word red, and then I'm going to close the square bracket. Click on OK. It is as simple as that. So hopefully you're sort of starting to see how these custom formats can be constructed. What about if I want to make all of the positive values in here green? Well, let's select Control 1. Now, a little tip for you here, if you want to use green for this kind of thing, and this applies to when you're doing things like custom formats and conditional formats, things like that. If I was to type at the beginning here, green, because we want to format the positive values in green, the green that Excel produces by default is actually really hideous. Let me show you. It's just, ugh. It's like neon. It's really hard to read. I'm sure people who have accessibility issues are not going to enjoy this at all. So let me show you a much, much nicer green that's easier on the eyes for anything like this. Let's Control 1 again. Replace green, God, I've got to use my arrows again, with color 10. So Excel has these other things, aside from red, blue, green, yellow, all of the standard colors, it does have a color palette of colors that are called color 1, color 2, color 3, all of those kinds of things. So color 10 is actually a really nice green. And I use this all the time. Whenever I need a green in Excel, this is what I'll use. So when we do that, we get a much nicer green, which blends in a bit nicer with that heading row as well. So hopefully this is starting to make a little bit more sense. So I think that's everything I wanted to show you on this one. Let me just have a quick check. I'm sure there was something else. No, that was it. That was it. Okay, so how are we doing so far? Is everybody understanding that so far? Let me just quickly flip back and take a look, see if there's any comments as we're going through. As I said, I'm on one screen today, so I can't see everything. Everything all good? Is everybody still there? Yeah. Is it making sense so far? Yes, wonderful. Excellent. All right, shall we move on to something a little bit more exciting? We're going to move on to example number 2. Now, again, these are very short examples, but as I said, you can apply these to much larger data sets. Now, here we have a very small table. Again, we have some employees, and maybe they've just had their appraisals and they've been given a job rating, but from 1 to 10. So anybody, these are our little rules just here, all staff or any staff who have a job rating of 7 or higher are going to get a thumbs up emoji. Any staff with a job rating of 7 or under are going to get a thumbs down emoji. So this is how you can basically use logic and emojis in your custom formats as well. So don't think you're just limited to changing the color or changing the actual format of the number. You can incorporate other things in here as well. So in general, this is sort of like, this is logical. So if you're used to using Excel and you're used to using things like if statements, this is sort of kind of like an if statement. We're sort of saying if the employee has a job rating of greater than or equal to 7, then we're going to give them a thumbs up emoji. But instead of doing an if formula, we're going to use custom formatting to put these emojis in. So there should be a couple of things that you've never seen before in this. So let's select these numbers, Control 1. All right, let's go down to custom formatting and we're going to click in here and we're going to delete out general. Now what we're going to do this time is we're going to add our logic into here as opposed to particularly specifying positive and negative values because we have positive values in here. So what we need to do if you want to add logic as a custom format is we're going to open a bracket and our first piece of logic is staff with a job rating of 7 or higher. So what we want to say here is everyone who has a job rating of greater than or equal to 7, that needs to go in quote marks. We want to apply a thumbs up emoji. So how on earth do we do that? Well, an emoji needs to go in quote marks. And then what you can do is on your keyboard, if you press the Windows key and then period or full stop, whatever you prefer, it's going to pop open the Windows emoji gallery. And you can go in here and you can search for different things. You can see mine are here because I was practicing this earlier. I want the thumbs up emoji. If I click it, it's going to put that into my custom formatting behind. Now, one thing to note, which is probably very obvious, you're not going to get this really cool looking colored emoji. You're going to get the black and white version. Now, if you're doing this using Excel Online as opposed to the desktop version that I'm using, you will get the full color version. In the desktop version, you just get the little black outline. But it's good enough for what we want to do here, when you need to put that in quotes. We then need to press semicolon, and then we're going to put in our second piece of logic. So we want to open a bracket, and this time we're going to say anything that is less than 7, we want that to be a down thumb emoji. So again, we're going to press Windows key, period or full stop. I'm going to choose this one, and we're going to close the quote marks. So when we click on OK, that's exactly what we should have. So you can see here we've got some downward pointing thumbs and we've got some upward pointing thumbs. Now, the really important thing to remember here is that these are still values. Again, if you look in that formula bar, I keep reiterating this point, but it's so important. Those emojis are simply a mask that is slapped over the top of the value. The value still remains the same. So again, if I wanted to do calculations, I mean, I'm not sure why I would want to add up the job ratings, but just in this example, we could, if we wanted to, do equals sum, and we could add up all of these and hit enter, and it's going to give us a thumb emoji because I have formatting applied to that cell. But hopefully, if I change this back to general, it's going to give us the answer. Okay, so just remember that it's such an important point. Doesn't matter what's applied over the top, the number is still underneath. Now, what if I wanted to change these thumbs to different colors? Well, again, if I select this cell range, Control 1, and go up to here, I can simply add the colors on the front. So again, we can just go to the front of this one, and maybe I want the thumbs up to be that nice green. So let's say color 10. Just add it on the front. It's really, really simple once you know some basic rules. And then for this one, I just want the standard red in there. Click on OK. And now we get those little different colored emojis. Pretty cool. Now, we can also combine this with conditional formatting. So this is sort of just showing you a little bit of conditional formatting as well as custom formatting. You combine these two together to give a really nice effect. So we'll just run through this very quickly because this session isn't about conditional formatting, but I always find people find this quite useful. So maybe now, based on the icon, the emoji that I have in the cell, maybe I want to highlight all of the rows that contain red thumbs down and all the rows that have a green thumbs up. So what we can do is we can select our cell range. We can go to conditional formatting and we need to apply a new rule. So we're going to say use a formula to determine which cells to format. And if you want to highlight the entire row based on a condition, let me show you how you do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in equals. I'm going to select the column that contains the emoji. Now, with conditional formatting, notice it's going to put in a absolute reference. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we always want our formatting to apply to column B. So we want column B to be fixed, but we want it to run across the rows. So we don't want the row to be fixed. So we need to change this referencing so we're fixing the column, but not the row. If we kept that as an absolute reference, when we apply the conditional formatting, it's only going to apply to cell B4 and nothing else. Okay, so we need to make it mixed referencing. So what we're going to say then is we can't say in here if the cell in B4 is a thumbs down emoji. We can't do that. Okay, so in this instance, we still have to use the number that's laying underneath in order to perform this logical test. Okay, so don't be fooled by that. Even though we have an emoji in the cell, we can't use it in the logic. So I'm going to have to say here, if the value in cell B4, and our first piece of logic was if the value is, what did I have as the first? What did I have as the first one? Oh, greater than or equal to 7. That's right. Equal to 7. And then we can choose format, and then we can go into fill, and we can choose what we want to fill that with. Okay, so if what we have in cell B4 is greater than or equal to 7, it's going to highlight the row. So let's click on OK, and you can see there it is. All right, so again, conditional formatting helps us highlight a couple of really important points when it comes to custom formatting. Again, we are using the value in the underlying cell and not what we can see in here. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to undo. And just to show you, because we haven't really spoken about it too much, most of the time we've been working in this session on positive, negative, and zero values. We haven't really touched on that fourth position, and that is text values in cells. So let's just keep using this little table just here, because in this first column, in column A, I only have text. I don't have numbers. So if I wanted to use custom formatting on a column that contains text, when I press Control 1 and go to Custom, I could build out my formatting this way. So what I could say here is I'm going to choose this formatting. So for positive values, I could say that I want them to look like this. Remember, that's just the standard formatting with comma separator. Or I could add a pound symbol in the front if I wanted them formatted with a currency symbol. Semicolon, I could then specify how I want my negative values to look. So I'm going to say I want them to be with a minus in front, then the dollar symbol, and then we want the formatting, comma, 0. Now, if I don't want any formatting applied, or I just want a blank where we have 0 values, which is what we have in the third position, I can simply press another semicolon, which is going to jump over. Remember, if we don't specify anything for the 0 values, it's going to return a blank cell. So now we're on to that fourth position, and this is where we can specify how we want any text in the selected cell range to look. So maybe I just want the text to be red. I could simply open a square bracket and add red on the end. So when I click on OK, you can see that's exactly what it does because we have nothing but text in here. What if I was to change this cell to a 0? What's going to happen? We get a blank because that's what we specified in the custom formatting. What about if I enter a number in here? So maybe 500,000. Let's hit enter. It's going to format it as I've specified in the custom formatting. We have a comma separator and we have a currency symbol. What about if I enter a minus? So let's just say minus 30. We get exactly what we specified. So that should show you everything for each position in custom formatting. All right. Hopefully this is starting to make a little bit of sense. There is so much to learn with this actually. It's actually a really, really huge topic. I would encourage you, like after this session, to do a little bit of reading, maybe watch some YouTube videos because all YouTube creators have different examples. And the best way to learn something is just to see that skill used in lots and lots of different examples. So always jump onto YouTube after these sessions and just have a good old look around and just spend like half an hour or so. You don't have to spend ages. Spend half an hour or so just watching some videos and looking through different examples because that's when you're really going to start to learn it properly and then apply it to your own work. I have one more example to show you. How are we doing for time? Pretty good, actually. We're going to finish probably in about 10 minutes or so, which will be about perfect. So the final example I'm going to show you here, this actually came from a video that I did on TikTok recently, and it was a really popular video. So I thought I would include it in here because people seem to really enjoy that. And it's just basically bringing together a lot of the stuff that we've learned so far in this lesson. Now, again, I have a very small data set. You could be using a much larger data set. That is absolutely fine. But let's pretend that we are selling skincare to the masses. And you can see here in column A, I have the skincare products that I'm selling. And then maybe this column is the actual quantity of each that I've sold. And this is my target. So maybe I'm working for, what do they call them? Those MLN type people, where people sell on skincare products, things like that. So maybe they've given me a target. This is how much I should be selling each week. And this is what I've actually sold down here. So what I want in this column is I want to see what the difference is between the actual and the target, and I want to use custom formatting to represent these figures. Now, the first thing we need to do here is we need to add a formula into the cell, which is basically going to be the actual minus the target. So if we do equals, we're going to do actual minus target. So now when I double click to copy that down, you should see here the variance is minus 19. So my target for selling moisturizer was 76, but I actually only sold 57 bottles of moisturizer. I'm a very disappointing salesperson. So I'm down by 19. This one, my target was 61. 61 bottles of serum, and I actually sold 61. So there's zero variance just there. And for some of these, you can see I did a little bit better. So the target was actually 51, and I sold 75. So I really know how to sell eye makeup remover. So we have those values in the cell just here. And what we want to do is just make these look a little bit more interesting. And we're going to do that by applying custom formatting. So let's do Control 1, and we're going to jump straight down to custom. So we're going to start with positive values. And if we look at our numbers that we have selected here, you can see that in here we have a mixture of positive values, negative values, and zero values. So let's deal with positive and negative first of all. So how do we want our positive values to look? Well, I want these to be in green. So I'm going to use my nice color 10. That's the first thing that goes in there. Now I want to define how I want the symbol to look, because I want to have a symbol in there, which is a little up arrow. Now, this might look confusing first of all, but just bear with me, trust the process. We're going to put a 0 in here. And the 0 means fixed, remember? Now, if you look at the data that we have selected, you can see that we have some 0 values, or effectively we have in this variance column, we have numbers that have one character. So this 0 has one character. -3 is basically one character if you don't count the minus. Now, if I was to put 2 zeros in here, when I apply the custom formatting, it's going to change all these 0 values to 2 zeros. Whereas if I just keep 1 0 in here, that's kind of like the minimum character that we have in here. So we need 1 0, okay? we then need to open quote marks, and I'm going to add in a symbol. So I'm going to press space because I want a space in between the number in the cell and the symbol. Now I want an up arrow symbol. So how do I put a symbol in when I'm working within this custom format or this format cells dialog box? Well, we have some cool little keyboard shortcuts we can use. So if you want an up arrow, which is what I want here for positive values, if you press Alt 30 on your keyboard, it's going to give you that nice little tidy black up arrow. Going to close the quotes. Now look at the sample just above. That's telling me what it's going to look like in the cell. And that's pretty much what I want it to look like. I want it to have the value, in this case, -19, with an up arrow. Okay. Let's press semicolon. So in that second position, I want to have down arrow for any negative values. So we're going to type in square bracket, and I want these to be red. Close the square bracket. And we're basically going to follow the formatting along. This is what I always generally tend to do, is I kind of follow the formatting that's gone previously. So I'm going to have a 0. We're going to open a quote mark. I want a space in there because I don't want the symbol right next to the number. I want, a little bit separated. And then we're going to input a down facing arrow. And the keyboard shortcut for this is Alt 31. Close the quote marks. Now, if I was to just leave it like this, I've basically only specified what I want it to look like for positive and negative values. So let's click on OK. You can see what that looks like. Now, that's fine. It looks really neat. And this is what people liked about this most, but it just looks really tidy. Like you could do something similar with icon sets. So you can see we've got some icon sets in here, but icon sets look pretty rubbish, if I'm honest, when you have them in cells. This is a much nicer, tidier looking, more professional way of doing this type of formatting. That's why I generally prefer it over things like icon sets. Now I can see here there is one more thing I do want to change. So where we have 0 values, where the target and the actual are exactly the same, I don't want these to show with in green and with an up arrow, because these are the same. There's no variance just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in something into this third position. Remember, the third position is how we're formatting 0 values. So I just want a line, and I want that line to be purple. Now, let's press semicolon. And this time, if you want a nice purple, we're going to use color 13. That's quite a nice purple. Let's close the bracket. And I'm going to follow the format on. So I want to put a 0. We need a fixed decimal. I'm going to open a quote mark, press space. And then if you just want a line, we need to use the keyboard shortcut Alt 22. It looks like a block when you put it into here. It looks more like a line when it's actually in the cell. So we're going to close the quote marks just there. So now we have positive, negative, and 0 values covered. Click on OK, and you can see what that looks like. And I think that looks really nice. And if you wanted to, you could position these so that they were more in the center, like that. Okay, in fact, I don't actually like those in the center. I'm going to put those back over to the side. And the cool thing about this is that everything is dynamic, so it will update if the data changes. So if I was to change this to 50, for example, you can see it updates. If I was to change this one to 100, that's going to update as well. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you all learn at least one thing that you think is going to help you. Have a great night, a great afternoon, a great morning, wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.